Hi friends, let's look at life processes. What is generally indication of life? Movement of various types can be taken as an indication of life. That is, if an organism is moving, like the plant is growing, or human is walking and dog is barking, or something like that, some kind of a movement, if the organism shows, then we can say that it is alive. Maintenance of life requires which essential processes? See, there are some processes which are essential for organism to live. One is nutrition, okay, which is basically eating. Second is respiration, which is basically breathing, right? Because it has to breathe in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide, okay? And this oxygen, what it breathes in, will be used to create energy within the body in addition to the food that has been consumed, correct? And number three, transport of materials within the body. For example, if I eat food, it will be absorbed in stomach, digested in stomach, absorbed in intestine, small intestine. But once it gets absorbed in small intestine, that energy has to be circulated, transported to various parts of the body, like arms, legs, head, etc. Right? That is the transport. And last one is excretion of waste. So every morning we do number one, number two, etc. Okay, so that is excretion of waste. Note that nutrition is required to create energy to maintain life processes and keep growing. Okay, so the four processes that are required are nutrition, which is eating, respiration, which is breathing, transport of materials within the body, and fourth one is excretion of waste. What is autotrophic nutrition? See, autotrophic nutrition means the organisms which survive on photosynthesis. Okay, autotrophic nutrition involves intake of simple inorganic materials from the environment like carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and water from the soil, and in presence of an external energy source like the sun and chlorophyll, these simple inorganic materials are used to synthesize complex high energy organic material like glucose. Okay, so the process of such kind of nutrition is known as autotrophic nutrition, which is basically photosynthesis. Okay, what is heterotrophic nutrition? Heterotrophic nutrition is intake of complex materials prepared by other organisms. Okay, for example, in human being, we intake fruits from the trees, or if we are eating chicken, then we are eating the meat of a certain other organism, okay, which is the chicken. So heterotrophic nutrition is intake of complex material prepared by other organisms. Okay, what is the function of alimentary canal and small intestine? See, the alimentary canal is the canal which starts with the mouth and all the way includes the esophagus, small intestine, large intestine, and finally it ends at anus, which is where the number two goes out of the body. Okay, the solid waste number two goes out of the body. Okay, so alimentary canal and small intestine are responsible for nutrition. So whatever food you eat, it gets digested, and the carbohydrates get converted to glucose, and the glucose is absorbed to create energy. Proteins are used for proteins are absorbed as amino acids. All that happens in the alimentary canal and the small intestine. In human beings, food is eaten and broken down in various steps along the alimentary canal. The digested food is absorbed in small intestine to be sent to the all cells of the body. Okay. What is ATP? See, during the process of respiration, that is breathing in, organic compounds such as glucose. So glucose is coming from the food that you have eaten. Okay, and oxygen is coming from the air you have breathed in. Organic compounds such as glucose are broken down into energy providing form known as ATP. So whenever glucose is oxidized with the oxygen that you breathe in, we get ATP, which is the energy capsule. You can think of it as energy capsule, energy form that can be used by the cell for various functionalities of the cell. So ATP is used to provide energy for other reactions in the cell. What are types of respiration? Okay, the respiration may be aerobic, which happens in presence of air, or anaerobic, where the air is very less. Aerobic respiration makes more energy available to the organism. What is the function of circulatory system in the human being? See, in human being, transport of materials, so whenever you breathe in, the oxygen that you breathe in, okay, and is transported to various cells using blood. Okay, oxygen gets dissolved in the blood, and the blood goes and circulates, transports this oxygen to various cells, and in the cells the oxygen reacts with glucose and gives you energy. Okay, and the byproduct is carbon dioxide. Now the carbon dioxide is collected by the blood and it is sent back to lungs, and then it is sent out of the body. That is what you call it as breathing out. Okay, even food, whatever food you eat, the stomach and small intestine will digest it, but from the small intestine the blood will take the digested glucose, amino acids, and it will supply it to all the parts of the body. Okay, so this supplying of materials to all part of body, which is done by blood, which is pumped by heart, is known as circulatory system. Okay, even the excretory products, okay, whatever excretory products are created as byproducts are taken by the blood, and they are passed out of the anus, and they are passed out of the kidneys. So this is the function of the circulatory system. The circulatory system consists of heart, blood, and blood vessels. So the answer is, in human being, the transport of materials such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, food, and excretory products is a function of circulatory system. The circulatory system consists of heart, blood, and blood vessels. How does the transportation happen in plants? See, in plants, transport of water, minerals, or food or other materials is a function of vascular tissue, which consists of xylem and phloem. Okay, the tissues which are responsible for transporting water and minerals absorbed from the soil inside plants, okay, the tissues are named xylem and phloem. What is the function of kidneys? In human beings, excretory products in form of soluble nitrogen compounds are removed by nephrons in the kidneys. Okay, so what happens is, whenever the body creates energy, byproduct is carbon dioxide and unwanted products, which are excretory products. Excretory means they have to be taken outside the body. Okay, these are in form of soluble nitrogen compounds. That is, nitrogen compounds, the excretory products are in form of nitrogen compounds, which usually are soluble in blood. Okay, so the blood will transport it to kidneys, and the nephrons, which are the cells in kidneys, will absorb this, and it will excrete it out of the human body. Like, number one, the liquid waste. Okay, that is what we do in the morning, right? Number one, liquid waste, that is the excreted product from the kidneys. Okay, that is the function of kidneys. How does the excretion happen in plants? Plants use variety of techniques to get rid of waste material. For example, waste material may be stored in the cell vacuoles as gum or resin. Okay, and when the leaves fall to the ground, these unwanted materials are removed away from the plant. This is removed by falling leaves or excreted into the surrounding soil. What kind of chemical reactions create energy in body? See, oxidation reduction reactions, which are some of the most common chemical means to break down molecules. For this, many organisms use oxygen sourced from atmosphere by breathing. So whatever oxygen you breathe in is in the air that you breathe in, that oxygen will be used at each cell. It will be transported by blood to various cells, and in the cell this oxygen will react with glucose, and oxidation reduction reaction will happen, giving out energy. What is respiration? Respiration is process of breathing in oxygen from atmosphere. Okay, you breathe in air and use the oxygen inside that air. Okay, and use it to process, to break down your food sources to cellular leads. This is what we call respiration. It also involves breathing out of CO2, which is created as a byproduct during energy creation. So whenever you breathe in air, the oxygen is used to react with glucose, create energy in the cell, and the byproduct, which is CO2, is again breathed out, taken out of the body by breathing out. This is known as respiration. What happens in case of a single-celled organism? In case of a single-celled organism, no specific organs are needed for taking food, exchange of gas, removal of waste, etc. Because since it is a single cell, the entire surface is in contact with the environment. Okay, so food oxygen intake happens by food, or oxygen intake and excretion of unwanted products happen by diffusion. Okay, because the whole cell is in touch with the environment, the intake and excretion can happen from any part of the cell. What happens in case of multicellular complex organism? In case of multicellular complex organism, we will have different organs. For example, humans have the nose and the lungs for breathing in. Okay, they have the mouth, esophagus, stomach, and the small intestine for nutrition intake, digestion, transportation. They have heart, blood and blood vessels for transportation, and they have kidneys and anus for excretion. Okay, so in multicellular complex organism, there are different organs which are responsible, okay, for various activities of life processes. Why diffusion is insufficient to meet oxygen requirements of multicellular organism like humans? Because humans have multicellular organisms like human have many cells and many tissues in many organs. See, the cells which are present in us combine together to form tissues. The tissues will combine to form organs, and these organs have to be supplied with oxygen. Okay, all of these organs are not in direct contact with the atmosphere. Okay, therefore we need a transport system to take the oxygen, and we need to supply it to all these organs. All of them are not in direct contact with the atmosphere. Therefore we need transport mechanism to supply the oxygen to various organs. What criteria do we use to decide whether something is alive? Okay, if an organism is moving, growing, eating, that is nutrition, breathing, that is respiration, circulating air or food internally, that is transportation, and excreting, it can be said to be alive. What are the outside raw materials used by an organism? Outside organism uses outside food and nutrition, outside food for nutrition, and oxygen in atmosphere for respiration. What are autotrophs? See, autotrophs are organisms whose carbon and energy requirements are fulfilled by photosynthesis. Okay, they intake carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water from the soil, and they are converted to carbohydrates in presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. This is what is photosynthesis. Okay, carbohydrates are utilized for providing energy, for example, in plants and bacteria. Okay, so here's the reaction. 6 molecules of CO2, carbon dioxide, plus 12 molecules of water, H2O, in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight, get photosynthesized to glucose, which is C6H12O6, plus 6 oxygen molecules, plus 6 water molecules. Okay, so 6 CO2 plus 12 H2O in presence of chlorophyll and sunlight gives you 1 molecule of glucose, which is C6H12O6, and 6 oxygen molecules, that is 6 O2, and 6 water molecules, that is 6 H2O. Describe the process of photosynthesis. See, first absorption of light energy happens due to chlorophyll. Okay, then the conversion of light energy into chemical energy splits the water molecule into H2 and O2. Okay, the water molecules get split into molecules of hydrogen and oxygen. Then reduction of CO2 happens to carbohydrates. Reduction means the oxygen in CO2 is removed and it is given hydrogen to make it glucose. It becomes carbohydrates. Okay, again the equation, you can see 6 CO2 plus 12 H2O in presence of chlorophyll and sunlight. The oxygen from CO2 is removed and hydrogen is added to it to give you glucose, C6H12O6. Okay, so this is the process of photosynthesis. And you can see the diagram which shows the cross section of a leaf. All the images are taken from NCERT soft copy. The copyright belongs to NCERT only. It is just used here as a means to help students easily understand, but the copyright belongs to NCERT only. Okay, so the topmost upper dermis layer, below that you have cells which have chloroplasts. Okay, the chloroplasts are small celluloids which have chlorophyll in it. Okay, and there is air space between these cells. Okay, and below that is the lower epidermis. Upper epidermis, between that is the cells which have chloroplasts, which have chlorophyll in them, and the lower epidermis. So this is the cross section of a cell. Note, the green dots are cell organelles, chloroplasts that contain chlorophyll. Describe how plants intake CO2. Okay, again this diagram is taken from NCERT. It is their copyright. We have guard cells and we have stomatal pore. Whenever the stomatal pore opens, the carbon dioxide, that is the air which having the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, is taken in, and whenever this stomatal pore closes, the circulation of the air stops. Okay, stomata are tiny pores present on surface of leaves. Massive amount of gaseous exchange takes place in the leaves through the pores for purpose of photosynthesis. The guard cells swell when the water flows through them, causing stomatal pore to open, which causes air with carbon dioxide to flow into the plant. Similarly, pore closes if the guard cells shrink. On the left, you can see that the guard cells have swelled and the stomatal pore, stomata, is open. And on the right side, you can see that the guard cells have shrunk and the stomata, thus the pore, is closed. What are the inputs needed by the plants in addition to H2O and CO2? In addition to H2O, H2O is used in photosynthesis, is taken up from the soil by the roots of terrestrial plants. Other materials like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, magnesium are taken up from the soil. Also, organic compounds that are prepared by bacteria in the soil from atmospheric nitrogen, okay, are taken in by the plant. Explain the process of nutrition in human beings. Okay, so the process of nutrition, that is the process of eating and digesting food and excreting out the solid waste. Okay, the process of nutrition is a complicated one. It is explained in steps. For each step, we will first show the diagram and then we'll explain what happens in the diagram. Okay, the complete setup of the nutrition is alimentary canal, basically a long tube extending from mouth to anus. Anus is the part where we excrete our solid waste, that is number 2, also called feces. Okay, now here it starts with the mouth. Okay, so the mouth has the tongue, and here's where we sort of eat our food. We have teeth to chew it, etc. So in mouth we crush the food with our teeth. Saliva is secreted in mouth by salivary glands. Saliva contains enzyme called salivary amylase that breaks down starch inside our food, which is a complex molecule, into simple sugar. Okay, so our mouth has teeth which grind the food, breaks it into parts, and the saliva from the salivary glands react with it. Enzyme called salivary salivary amylase breaks down starch in our food to give simple sugar. Okay, next comes the esophagus. From mouth, the food is taken to the stomach through a food pipe or esophagus. Okay, then you have the stomach. The stomach is where the food gets digested. Okay, the molecular walls of the stomach mix the food thoroughly with digestive juices. The gastric glands present in the wall of the stomach release HCl. HCl is hydrochloric acid, and a protein digesting enzyme called pepsin and mucus. The HCl creates an acidic medium which helps the pepsin react with the proteins and digest them. Mucus protects the inner lining of the stomach from HCl. Okay, so stomach is where food gets digested. It has glands which creates HCl, hydrochloric acid, plus an enzyme called pepsin and mucus. The mucus will protect the inner linings of the stomach. The food is in the presence of acid reacts with pepsin, and the pepsin breaks down your proteins, and this is the first part of the digestion. After stomach, the food will go into small intestine, and there will be some enzymes created or secreted by liver and pancreas that will also come into play. Okay, so from mouth through esophagus to stomach and then to small intestine. Okay, from the stomach, food now enters small intestine. Complete digestion of carbohydrates, proteins and fats happen here. Okay, in stomach, of course, the food is made acidic and pepsin reacts, and proteins are broken down, etc. But the complete digestion of carbohydrates, proteins and fats happen in small intestine. It receives secretions from liver and pancreas. Okay, so whatever enzymes which are secreted by the liver and pancreas are also getting used in the small intestine. Okay, so liver is a organ which sits just above the stomach, and it has a gallbladder wherein the bile juice which is secreted by the liver is stored, and via the bile duct it flows into stomach and later into the small intestine. Okay, so remember, we have mouth, we have esophagus, stomach. From stomach the food goes into small intestine, but the small intestine for digestion uses enzymes which are secreted or created in liver and pancreas also. The liver is an organ which sits just above the stomach. It has a bile duct where the bile juice secreted by liver is stored, and this bile, the gallbladder is where the bile juice is stored, and through the bile duct it goes into stomach and then goes into small intestine. Okay, and you have pancreas, which is a small organ which is below the stomach. Okay, this pancreas also secretes some enzymes that flow into the small intestine. Okay, so bile juice from liver makes acidic food coming from stomach to alkaline. Okay, so what happens? The food would have been mixed with hydrochloric acid in stomach. Now it is acidic. So before it goes into the small intestine, we add bile juice, which is secreted by the liver, making it alkaline, and this helps the pancreatic enzymes to react with the food. Okay, and this bile juice also acts on fats. Okay, the bile is stored in gallbladder and goes into stomach via bile duct. Okay, now you have another organ which is the pancreas, which is just below the stomach, which is orange in color in the image, and all these images are taken from NCERT and the copyright belongs to NCERT only. It is used here for making the life of students easier, to create video tutorials so that they can understand easily and watch it and rewatch it and remember the matter. But the copyright of the content belongs to NCERT only. Okay, so pancreas secretes pancreatic juice which contain enzymes like trypsin for digesting proteins and lipase for breaking down emulsified fats. Okay, so the pancreas also secretes some enzymes, the name being trypsin for digesting proteins and lipase for breaking down the fats. Okay, now the walls of small intestine contain glands which secrete intestinal juice. The enzymes in it convert proteins into amino acids. See, small intestine is where all the digestion completely happens. The proteins are broken to amino acids. Okay, carbohydrates are broken into glucose. Okay, and the fats are broken into fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, so the digested food is absorbed by numerous finger-like projections called villi, V-I-L-L-I, which are present in the wall of the small intestine. Okay, and these villi absorb food because they have many blood vessels which take the absorbed food and make it flow into the body, all cells of the body for energy. Okay, so the blood in the blood cells in the villi, villi, which is the finger-like structure present on the walls of the small intestine. The food is absorbed there, the blood absorbs the food, digested food, and then transports it to the all the cells of the body for energy. Okay, then finally comes the large intestine. What does the large intestine do? After the food passes from the small intestine, any unabsorbed food is entered into the large intestine, where it absorbs all the other necessary water from this food, and the rest of the materials is removed from the body via anus. Okay, what is the anus? Every morning we do number 2, the solid waste called the feces, FECES, is discarded out of the body. That is what goes out of anus. Okay, so this is the complete process of nutrition in human beings. What happens when tooth decays? See, tooth decay causes gradual softening of enamel and dentine. The teeth is made of enamel and dentine. It begins when bacteria acts on these sugars. So if you don't brush your teeth, there will be bacteria which acts on the sugars which are in the left out food, and these form acids that will react with the enamel, which will soften it. Okay, so the enamel loses its strength, and that's how the tooth decays. Tooth decay causes gradual softening of enamel and dentine. It begins when the bacteria acting on sugars produce acids that softens and demineralizes the enamel, which means it makes the enamel weak. What are the differences between autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition? Autotrophic nutrition is where organism, example plants, use photosynthesis to fulfill their energy needs. They absorb CO2 from atmosphere, H2O from ground, right, and create glucose and energy. Okay, whereas heterotrophic organisms consume outside food like fruits. Okay, animals can consume grass, humans can consume meat. Okay, and convert the carbohydrates and proteins in the food to energy. Okay, this is for heterotrophic organisms. Where do plants get each raw material required for photosynthesis? The plants get CO2 from atmosphere, carbon dioxide from atmosphere, H2O, water from the soil. They have chlorophyll present in their leaf cells. They use sunlight, CO2, H2O and chlorophyll for photosynthesis to create energy. Okay, what is the role of acid in our stomach? Okay, HCl in the stomach helps the pepsin enzyme to digest proteins in the food. Okay, so for pepsin enzyme to break down the proteins, it needs an acidic environment. So the HCl, hydrochloric acid in our stomach, helps these pepsin enzymes to digest the proteins in the food. What is the function of digestive enzymes? See, the digestion, complete digestion, everything happens in the small intestine. Of course, some initial digestion and mixing of the food happens in stomach, but the digestive enzymes in the enzymes secreted by the small intestine convert proteins into amino acids. This is very important. Proteins are converted into amino acids. Complex carbohydrates like starch are converted into glucose, and the fats in the fatty acids are converted into fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, so all these products, whether it is amino acids, whether it is glucose, or whether it is glycerol and fatty acids, they all can be used for creating energy for the cells. Okay, so this is the function of the digestive enzymes. How is the small intestine designed to absorb digestive food? The digested food is absorbed by numerous finger-like projections inside the wall of the small intestine called villi. Okay, the digested food is absorbed by numerous finger-like projection called villi in the walls of small intestine. They have many blood vessels which take the absorbed food and transport it to all the cells in the body for energy.